And that report by Ibrahim Karanja informs our discussion this morning. We're discussing what one Jeremiah Kioni referenced as or referred to as political prostitution in a letter to the National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula, demanding or rather accusing him of allowing Sabina Chege to forum shop and not replacing her with Mark Mwanje in his view in a timely fashion. And already with me in the studio we have Nudin Hagai as well as Gashri Kariuki, the advocates of the High Court. Let me just introduce them together. Certified professional mediator Nudin Hagai as well, Director Ustawi KE, Head of Programs, Interparties Youth Forum. They wear many hats. Good to have you with us this morning. But first, let's take a look at the dailies. We begin with the Daily Nation. End of free secondary education is the question. Let me just start. You've seen this what do you call this shopping thing? Let me just save it, because in this day and age you look for big gains. All right, here we go. Learners in institutions have only been paying for their lunch meals. Proposed Structure 2024 crisis under pressure from impatient suppliers, the government's failure to release free learning cash, and the high cost of living. Principals are now seeking a fee increase across all categories of secondary schools in a move that will see parents of students in free day schools dip into their pockets for the first time in 15 years. National schools current GOK grant 22,244 parents 53,554, but now the proposal is that they fought 73,182, which is an increase of 19,628 shillings, and it goes. So if you get your copy of the Daily Nation, remember epaper.nation.africa. You can take a look also at the extra and county schools and the day schools. So page 4, let's flip, let's get more detail. Let me see. One more page, and there we go. This one has been penned by one David Mushungu. Let me just bring it in closer. I think that's better. And in the first few paragraphs, he tells us the free day secondary education that has benefited millions of learners for the last 15 years will come to an end if the government adopts proposals by school principals that will see parents dig into their pockets for their children's education. Through the Kenya Secondary Schools Head Association, the principals have proposed an increase in school fees for all categories of secondary schools, whereby parents with children in county and extra county schools will feel the pinch of the highest fees raise by about 25,000 shillings. This will take the annual fees paid by the parents to 66,000, up from 40,500. If implemented, learners in day schools who according to Ministry of Education data account for about 70% of all learners in secondary schools and who have been enjoying free tuition will pay 5,372. Learners in day secondary schools only pay for their meals in arrangements agreed upon by parents and boards of management. Kesha has proposed a fee increase of 19,628 for learners in national schools. This will take the annual fees, as I mentioned earlier, up to 73,000 from 53,500. And a quote here: the fees charged in schools is highly inadequate as schools are operating on a shoestring budget as prescribed. Debts are therefore piling in schools while infrastructure development has become impossible, reads the proposal by the principals. And the proposal comes just days after a disclosure that all university students will now pay a percentage of their tuition fees, contrary to an earlier declaration by President William Ruto that those considered economically vulnerable would be funded by the government. This means only learners in the primary school and junior school segments would enjoy free education. Let me see. Anything else that is pertinent? I don't want to read the whole article because David will say we are selling a paper. All right, I will leave it. I will leave it there. But your initial thoughts, Gashri?
Well, Well, this is unfortunate. This is rather unfortunate in a country where the average Kenyan has to jump insurmountable or several hurdles just to make it, just to lead an average life. Now, this coming again, where parents are unable to even buy uniforms. I had a conversation recently around buying of uniforms and whether to do away with them or the government to supply them. It's rather unfortunate. We are looking at a catastrophe here, where we'll have less educated Kenyans, and you can imagine.
Yeah, schools, it would be the first time that parents of students in free-day schools dip into their pockets. Yeah, first time in 15 years. Nurdin Hagai, your thoughts? Because there has been so the reasoning the principal says increase in cost of living, given the increase, diesel goes up, everything else follows suit. Yeah. Delay in capitation, release of capitation. So they're saying this will solve the problem. Your view?
You see, first and foremost, when I just saw that, as you were reading it, something came to my mind. This reminds me of a song by Richie Spice, where he says, if education is the key, why are the bigger heads making it so expensive for we? So the question is, after the elections 2002, we were talking about free education, primary education. So we were meant to build from that, so as to make sure education is free from primary up to the university level. So it's sad to see that we are going back from the gains that we were meant to make. And it's even sadder to see now that they're saying the schools are cash-strapped. But I have an idea for the schools. We were told that there will be El Nino.
There will be
El Nino. Until recently, we were told there is no longer El Nino. And for El Nino, we were told that they have set aside 10 billion shillings to prepare for El Nino. Since there is no El Nino, why can't that money go to schools?
Okay.
That is the question. Because if they had 10 billion to use for El Nino, and now out of nowhere we have been told there is no longer El Nino, why can't that 10 billion shillings they set aside go straight to schools? So we avoid a scenario where parents have to look for money that they don't even have. You have to look at the scenario which we have right now. Everything has gone up, except income. So if schools are saying they have issues that they're cash-strapped, so do the parents. So if we have 10 billion lying idle, if it's still there, that is.
Of course, there's a use for it. It can't be lying idle.
Can it get its way to school? Because right to education is important to every child. And that would be a way of cushioning the parents. Because we remember during campaigns, this was a candidature that was pegged on social issues. Now, can they rise to the plate? Okay. Or was it just story ajaba?
Karibu sana, Jim India. Good to see you this morning. You're appealing to my Kamba eyes.
I know.
Political analyst. See, even me.
Brightness. It was very intentional.
So, your initial thoughts?
So I think I don't think education has ever been free in this country. Anyone who's ever gone to school for free, I'll be willing to just have a chat with them. The idea of free education has never really materialized. Parents have had over the years to cough money out of their pocket. One, I am glad that now it is official that it is not free, and so we are not deluded. And I hope we can extend this even to primary education, just so that we don't have this lie where people expect free education, and then you go to schools and you're told you have to pay for all this. So it's good that now and I hope that this then regulates, because we've had principals and a lot of school boards really charge parents exorbitant fees. If you have kids in school, you know how you're constantly paying for some random tuition, development, and things on that you can't explain. And so I hope that this move by Ministry of Education goes ahead to actually regulate the financing of the education system. Is it going to be difficult? It is going to be difficult. Free education is not sustainable. I think there are very few countries in the world that do free education. And if, as a people, we have to be honest with ourselves at some point, that the idea of free things has to come to an end, but that has a consequence, and then it means we have to create more opportunities for our people to actually make income. If you're going to, because we are not we're not necessarily a communist economy. We're a capitalistic economy. And in a purely capitalistic system, a market-driven system, we cannot rely a lot on free, we want free education, free healthcare. And anytime you hear the manifestos of certain politicians, it sounds like we're going back to a socialist society where we want to, give everyone free things, and then everybody is happy. It worked a couple of decades ago, but I think at this day and age, we have to find meaningful and sustainable ways of funding our systems, including education.
All right. Yeah. So also sharing, interestingly enough, the front page, bottom half of the front page, is this Ruto cuts. I wanted to throw shade and say there's a budget for traveling, but there's no budget for school. But anyway, let me not, yes. Okay, here we go. Ruto cuts his travel budget by 500 million shillings. President William Ruto has announced plans to slash the executive travel budget by up to 500 million shillings as part of the austerity measures by the Kenya Kwanza government. The president said the saved funds would be reallocated to support learners with disabilities. Speaking while flagging off vehicles for education officials at the Kenya Institute of Special Education in Nairobi yesterday, Dr. Ruto said the money will fund the production of assistive devices designed for children with disabilities. He might have been responding to this. Let me just pull it up real quick. Did I tell you can find even archived copies of the paper at epaper.nation.africa? And actually, Taifa Leo has gone big with that story as well. We'll take a look at it in a moment. I just want to... Which? Yes, here we go. This was, today is Friday, so Friday, this was Wednesday's paper. Taifa Leo. Here we go. Ziara 38 ndani ya mwaka. Rais Ruto ameendeleza mtindo wa mtangulizi wake, Rais mstaafu Uhuru Kenyatta, wa kufanya ziara nyingi katika nchi za nje zinazogharimu mamilioni ya fedha, huku akiwa kwenye ziara yake ya 38 kwa sasa. And then they've highlighted a couple of things at the bottom here. Let me scroll further down. There we go. Ziara yake ya kwanza ugenini ilikuwa Uingereza mnamo Septemba 18 mwaka wa 2022 alipohudhuria mazishi ya Malkia Elizabeth. Interesting that King Charles is next week going to be here. Kuanzia Januari mpaka huu hadi mwezi, I beg your pardon, kuanzia Januari mwaka huu hadi mwezi huu Dr. Ruto amefanya ziara 27 huku akizuru nchi zingine zaidi ya mara moja. Ziara ya hivi punde ni ya October 14th is what 14 aliyofanya nchini China kuhudhuria mkutano kuhusu barabara na miundo msingi. I thought he was in the UAE the other day at an investment forum, right? Yeah. And then ziara yake ya sasa nchini okay, here we go. Ziara yake ya sasa nchini Saudi Arabia ni ya 38 ndani ya mwaka mmoja, huku naibu wake naye akiwa nchini Ubelgiji. Here they've written Ubelgiji. I don't know. I'm no expert. Kidimwaga, good morning.
Morning.
Karibu sana. No, umetuata coat. It's hot, is it not? Even if they tell us El Nino is not happening, it's hot. Kidimwaga, your thoughts?
On the president's trip.
Yes, right? Him saying that here it is, he's going to cut his travel budget by 500 million shillings.
Thank you very much, first and foremost, for having me on the show, Olive. To you and to your viewers, I apologize profusely for running so late, consistently for a second time. It is not something that, I am man like myself should be doing. And I hope you are gracious enough to extend me that grace. Diving right into the heart of your question is that cutting travel budget is part of what I would call financial consolidation that the government should have done very robustly to this extent, that we expect legitimately that by now we should have seen government engaging in deliberate measures to cut down on spending, particularly spending that does not spur liquidity in the economy. For instance, foreign travel does not in any way spur liquidity in the economy. So that the only spending that we should have seen the government prioritizing are expenditure. I mean, spending that would ensure that there is sufficient liquidity in the economy. So that is a step in the right direction. We hope that it steps up such efforts so that we are able to ensure that we arrest the question of financial, the lack of liquidity in the economy. Thank you.
All right, Jim, your thoughts?
So again, I'm reading that Treasury had only allocated about 700 million to that
You
budget.
flip to page 10?
Yes,
well.
to page 10. The Treasury had allocated 700 million. So if he's going to cut that budget by 500 million, anyway, anyone who's been a budget holder before, you know that that's not how these things work. You don't go to launch things, whatever, and then you say, I am going to, that's not how budget holding works. If allocations have been made, there are procedures and there are systems by which you can reallocate if allowed, or a supplementary budget. So in this case, I don't, and I know we've run with this story, but I don't take it very seriously until we actually see that Treasury, who are responsible, can actually reallocate that money through, because he's saying he's moving it from his office and then he's allocating it to developing a factory somewhere. I mean, things don't work like that. Any sensible person who's held a budget knows things don't work like that. So I think this is just the president trying to appease the crowd wherever he was speaking. But in reality, if he was allocated 700 million, there's no way he's removing above 500 million. And we are being told that at the end of 3 months before, Ruto and his deputy Rigathi Gachagua had finished their full year budgets in 7 months. So it doesn't make sense. You can't, in one hand, have finished all your money. The Defense Committee is asking Treasury to allocate you an extra 1.3 billion, and then you come and make a public pronouncement that you will slash 500 million from that budget. So I think this is, it's not happening. The president is going to spend as much as he's been spending, 4 times more than his predecessor in the same period. So.
And out of Kiakazi.
I mean, we made our decision. And the thing is, a lot of his trips are shrouded in mystery, right? That we cannot audit, for instance. If you're being told that he spent 56 million in a trip, we can't audit that and say, okay, show us exactly how the breakdown of that 56 million. The people who are supposed to do that is Parliament, and obviously they're not doing that. So it feels a bit defeatist sometimes to listen to the amounts of money being spent on these trips, the number of delegations that the president, and yes, there's an economic value. I mean, we cannot say that he's going out there to just chill on the beach, sipping martinis and whatever. He's obviously doing something, but at what expense? Yeah, can we do it in a smart way? We can't tell people that we don't have money, the coffers are depleted, and then you and your deputy are constantly out of the country. It doesn't look good.
I can't remember who it was who sat here and said they're using Kenya like a lodging. Anyway, to quote the article, so he is quoted as saying, I am going to adjust my budget again. I will knock off a few things so that I can find 500 million shillings to start the manufacture of devices for use by children with special needs. So MPs agreed to approve the proposal that I will bring to Parliament today. To find the 500 million shillings, ensure you approve it. And then despite economic constraints, we are determined to allocate resources to provide the best education for all our children. This comes at a time when the president has spent over 56 million shillings on traveling expenses in the first half of the financial year ending June 2024. This is twice the amount spent by the same office in a similar period in 2021 and 4 times more than his predecessor. President Ruto has made 38 trips to foreign countries, which we've already looked at, since taking office in September 2022, where he has visited 45 cities in 38 countries over the course of 83 days. In May this year, the National Assembly's Defense Committee wanted the Budget and Appropriations Committee to allocate an additional 1.3 billion shillings to Dr. Ruto's globe-trotting mission after Treasury only allocated 700 million shillings. The move came after a report 3 months before showed that President Ruto and his deputy, Rigathi Gachagua, had finished their full-year budgets in 7 months. Early this month, President Ruto stopped non-essential foreign travel by state officers. In a communication sent out by the Chief of Staff and Head of Public Service, Felix Kiskei, the government said the austerity measures would affect delegations accompanying the president, his deputy, the First Lady, and Prime Cabinet Secretary, Musalia Mudavadi. So, yep. Your thoughts, Nurdin Hagai?
You know, first and foremost, we forget that between October 2022 and March 2023, the office had used 2.369 billion on travel, fuel, hospitality, and maintenance of motor vehicles.
Sorry, what are you quoting there?
That is between October, no, the statistics I had. That is between October 2022 and March 2023, that used 2.369 billion on travel, fuel, hospitality, and maintenance of vehicles. That was in June, reported in June. Now, in May, he sought an extra 2 billion shillings. No one has told us the gains he got after seeking an advance in travel, an enhanced budget. Now, we haven't audited, as he says, we haven't audited the gains as well. We haven't audited what is paid, because as he rightfully says, our parliament is dead. We don't have a parliament there, thanks to tyranny of numbers. And it's true. No one can question there, because those who are in Kenya Kwanza believe they're in government, and so they believe oversight is on Azimio. Azimio in itself, some of them are running to status at night, and you see handshakes on social media. So at the end of the day, nothing in politics happens by coincidence. This is courtesy of the news that happened a few days ago on travels. And so it's just playing to the gallery, political gimmicks, because at the end of the day, I doubt that will be done. Because if you look at the largesse in travels, I don't know if any of you noticed, the last time he was out of the country before he went to Saudi, the plane he was using, it was an Emirates plane. Do we have a presidential jet? Yes, we do. Do we have KQ? Yes, we do. Why are you using a Emirates plane? That's a question you need to understand. When he came back in, that was a chartered plane. Those are questions you need to ask. Who's being paid? But we don't have a parliament. So what happens? Yes, we do have a building, but representatives is what we don't have. So at the end of the day, this is just playing to the gallery. It's courtesy of the many travels that we saw, but nothing will stop him from traveling. But at the end of the day, we need to understand what gains as a country we gain from all these travels. Okay. Because taking photos and writing for us what you're doing there vis-a-vis what really happens on the ground are two different things. Because you can tell us you're going there to make certain inroads. Whose inroads, ours or yours? Because again, the eye in interest is always constant. So we have to be keen, and those who are meant to ask questions, those are members of parliament, need to raise the occasion.
Okay.
Unless that happens, we'll find ourselves seeing our president become a brand ambassador for flights and different countries, because we'll be waking up, he's in a new country, he comes in for 2 days, launches one or two, three things and goes. I know between now and the king coming, he won't leave. But who knows? Who's to say after the king leaves whether he'll be the next flight out?
All right. So we need to take a break, but we have already covered the standard as well. So not to panic.
He'll make a very good travel blogger. I'm just
let me ask you, this traveling thing has haunted the president, because even remember when they came into office, when he was deputy president, the hustler jet thing.
Yes.
Anyway, so we've essentially looked at the front page of the Taifa Leo, as I mentioned, which is Nitapunguza Ziara Zangu, an image there of the president. The Standard looked at the same thing. Travel question: Ruto cuts budget by 500 million shillings. A day after a special report on his foreign trips, the president pledges to cut. Here we go. Pledges to cut his travel budget, even as the state seeks to explain that the trips have been beneficial by unlocking investments and opportunities for Kenyans, in addition to projecting country's image globally. He said he would look for the 500 million shillings, not that it would all come from his travel budget. I think Jim is one who raised the issue of the numbers were not making sense to him. So, Gashri, we get your thoughts on the other side, including, so when we come back, we'll look at Business Daily. Before we look at the star, which launches us now into our conversation, yeah, because of the headline. But this is Business Daily. Treasury cuts development, inflates budget by 187 billion shillings. Still related to what we've been discussing. And then we'll look at the star, which launches us into our conversation. Azimio outrage over Sabina's new Jubilee job. Azimio demands Speaker rescind recognition of faction. On the other side of this break.
On this episode of Thamani, we focus on the energy business, solar energy.
God has given us sunlight. Let's tap it, put in the panel, and then you can use it for your home, for security, street light solar. You can also use for garden lights. We have some garden lights here. It's free.
How effective is this solar during rainy season?
During the night when they have moon, any light, it charges because of the battery inside, so it conserves the heat and then it is converted into energy, and then that heat now you get the lights.
All this and more on Saturday at 5:30 p.m. Thamani, showcasing resilience and exploring scalability.
Win a 3-bedroom house in Nanyuki sitting on a quarter-acre or a 30K weekly shopping voucher or a monthly plot. For every 100K you spend buying or paying for your plot, you earn 1 entry to the draw. The more you invest, the more entries you get. Bamba Nyumba na AMG.
What's your relationship with pain? What's your relationship with change? What is your relationship with finances? Do you get knocked out or do you go with the punches?
Kitovu cha vizazi ni baba mzazi. Unafaa kuzingatia nini kabla hujalitia guu lako ndani?
Join us for the 3rd edition of Man Cave.
Tuchambue, tutadavue nyama na mdahalo wake. Maswala ya wanaume peupe.
And this time we have an amazing after party session from 7 p.m. till midnight, and we'll have great music, great food, and also fireside chats. And for you guys who want to spend the night over, well, definitely we have the plan for you.
Tarehe 28 mwezi wa Oktoba mwaka 2023. Ungana nasi hapa All Tepes Picnic Site kwa sherehe bab kubwa.
When men meet, change happens.
Introducing the East African Entrepreneurship Conference and Expo, hosted in the heart of the Democratic Republic of Congo from October 31st to November 2nd, 2023. Proudly presented by Nation Media Group. Unleash the potential of East African entrepreneurship as you connect with visionary minds, explore untapped markets, and forge lucrative trade partnerships. Whether you're poised to conquer the vibrant business landscape of the DRC or eager to expand your footprint across East Africa, this event is your gateway to success. For comprehensive details and registration, call Joanne on 0724 661 440 or email jmasika@ke.nationmedia.com.
He's worked in the kingdom for over 40 years.
Maisha Saudi ni sheria.
Now, Ali Muhammad Abdallah shares what it takes to make it in Saudi's public transport sector.
You have to struggle, you have to sweat.
Also this week, investment opportunities in Ongata Rongai, a fast-growing destination for diaspora remittances with special attention on Impala developers.
We have quite a number of clients from the diaspora market, which is US and Germany right now.
In Impala, we have created a name for ourselves when it comes to trust.
This as diaspora investments back home continue to be safeguarded.
We are one of the leading intermediaries in the country.
Mortein Doom, with its trusted formulation, it provides protection in seconds. So spread the Mortein Doom message of how we, you and I, can fight to end malaria. Mortein Doom, Kenya's #1 choice.
The Chancellor, Vice Chancellor, and the University Council of the University of Kabianga welcomes all graduates, parents, guardians, and general public to its 11th graduation ceremony to be held this Friday, 27th October 2023 at the main campus graduation pavilion from 9 a.m. Follow the proceedings live on NTV and all University of Kabianga social media platforms. University of Kabianga, innovation and excellence.
All holders are notified to report and surrender unclaimed financial assets to the Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority, UFAA, on or before November 1st, 2023. Visit www.ufaa.go.ke and get started.
All right, welcome back to AM Live. In the studio, I have Kitty Mwaga, that is the convener of the Inter-Parties Youth Forum. We have Jim India, political, Jim, you have to add something to your title. Political analyst.
That's all you get.
We also have Nurdin Hagai, who's an advocate of the High Court, certified professional mediator. The P always gets me, trips me up. I'm like, public-private. Gashri Kariuki, who is not only an advocate of the High Court, director of Ustawi KE, as well as head of programs, Inter-Parties Youth Forum. Karibuni tena. We were smack dab in the middle of the conversation around cutting the budget, travel budget. Gashri?
Olive, there's a reason why when after the formation of the United Nations, the formation of the League of Nations, these nations came up with the idea of diplomatic emissaries, okay? These emissaries, these ambassadors, are the representatives of sovereignty and sovereign leadership in every country. So seeing William Ruto traverse and gallivant this globe, globe-trotting, seeing him doing all this globe-trotting and we have ambassadors always leaves me with a question. What are these ambassadors doing? And these guys,
but don't you think there are some deals that can only be negotiated at certain levels? You can only access certain rooms if you what's the word, clout? If you possess certain clout.
Yeah. That's correct. Mm-hmm. That's correct. But that also means there's a certain oomph we should expect from our diplomats. Okay? There's a certain. Let's take the American ambassador, for instance. We don't need to speak to Biden today for us to get a deal from America while her name is Meg Whitman.
Yes.
Well, Meg is around, yeah? Okay. So Ruto will just call Meg. Can we have this? Can we do this? Can we negotiate on this platform or on this level? And then somehow we find a way of signing deals, coming up with arrangements, without necessarily, it's true, without necessarily having to speak to Biden.
I hear what you mean.
So that means that Meg has created a niche for herself as a diplomat and as a representative of the people of the United States of America. So what are the Kenyan diplomats, in that case, doing? Unless unless they're doing other things there. And this comes at a time when we are having conversations, or we had been having conversations around the issue of Kenyans turning up, being brought back to Kenya in body bags from Saudi Arabia. Then you ask yourself, what exactly was the diplomat, was the ambassador, Kenyan ambassador to Saudi Arabia doing this whole time? You know? So anyway, ultimately, my take is there has to be a reason why we have diplomats, there has to be a reason why we have consulates, why we have all these people. And this is a team that Kenya painfully sustains, okay? And then on top of that, you need William Ruto traveling, becoming an influencer. I had Nurdin speak of, yeah, he's the influencer in chief, when you really think about it. And on top of that, while he's influencing, he's not even selling Kenya as a brand, okay? It's rather unfortunate, and I would rather he cuts down on his travel costs, he cuts down on all those travels. All of what you're saying, in fact, what you're asking could have been an email. You know, you can call, you can write a letter, you can find a way of even privately reaching out to other other sovereign leaders and coming up with deals, making arrangements that work for both states without necessarily the physical cost. Alternatively, we can host. Let the leaders come.
And cause a traffic snarl up. Anyway, this is the editorial cartoon.
Around that.
Okay, I will cut my travel budget. Amesema sawa basi. Nimewasikia. But it's some good news because this is all related to education. Let me quickly flip to the back of the Daily Nation. Something, some good news. Are we there yet? Yes, we are. Education and agriculture major winners in 187 billion shilling mini budget. Roads department has taken a major hit in Ruto's new spending plan after its budget was slashed by 20.74 billion shillings. This report is by Brian Ambani, and he tells us at a glance, the education sector has been allocated a further 29 billion shillings to cater for scholarships in first-year university students. The funds will also cater for help disbursements and funding for the Open University, which was officially opened by Dr. Ruto in August. Treasury has also set aside a further 4 billion shillings that will address the funding shortfall arising from the implementation of the new funding model for technical and vocational education and training centers, and 4.49 billion shillings for junior schools. Some good news here. Okay, so I did say we had already looked at the front page of Taifa Leo. We had looked at the front page of the Standard. At the very top here, farmers reject price of 4,000 shillings per bag of maize. Java to buy coffee from farmers. That's some good news. I believe it's Rigathi Gachagua who negotiated that. Yeah. Let's see. Excitement online as Uhuru marks his 62nd birthday. So we're heading to the Business Daily, and then now to the Kwenye topic. Treasury cuts development inflates budget by 187 billion shillings. Related to that story on the back page of the Daily Nation. This one is by Dominic Omondi. President William Ruto's administration has cut development expenditure but increased its maiden budget by 187 billion shillings in an effort to confront economic headwinds related to missed tax targets, huge debt repayment obligations, and spending pressures from critical sectors such as education and health. Let's see. Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndungu yesterday tabled his third mini budget, which he slashed development spending by 41.96 billion shillings. Development spending relates to costs incurred to create assets that will provide long-term public goods such as roads and hospitals. Quickly, your thoughts on this, because if this is accurate and you know, the reason this has happened is on account of huge debt repayment obligations and spending pressures from critical sectors such as education and health. Isn't that a good thing? The money is going in the right direction, Gashri? Or it's more complex than that?
How is it that? Okay, on the one hand, correct, yes. Injecting monies into education, health, good thing. But how is it that we also get to expand? Is it the wage bill, where we get more public servants who are not even supposed to be in the system, the likes of the CASs? I think they were appointed, right? They were sworn in. Were they sworn in?
They haven't assumed office.
They've not
is my
assumed
understanding,
office.
yeah.
Okay, but I think a lot of them are actually operational in as much as they've not assumed office. And we also have the incursion in Somalia. We have an incursion as it is. I don't know whether to call it an incursion or a peacekeeping process in the Congo. DRC.
We have troops there.
Yes, we are spending a lot of money in things I'd call politically or policy-wise irrelevant, and I don't see cuts in those particular sectors. Do you get what I'm saying? I don't see. I don't see cuts.
But it's your right to.
No, do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
I'm trying to say we're not seeing cuts in those particular sectors, but we are seeing monies coming into other sectors, where irrelevant things, unnecessary spending by public officers, by legislators, state officers. Again, I don't even want to go back to our good tourists in chief. Okay, if you're going to get cuts, or if you're going to inject monies into other things, I really, really would beg William Ruto, wherever he is right now, please, 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 cut down on irrelevant spending. There's a lot of irrelevant spending. Let's have a conversation around irrelevant spending before we get into other issues regarding cuts.
All right. Nurdin Hagai, balancing budgets is no mean feat.
Yeah.
No, Gashri, yes. You have every right to feel how you feel. It's your opinion. You have a right to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, Nurdin,
Yes.
Balancing budgets is no mean. I mean, it's not an easy thing. You have to take money from somewhere if you want to increase money somewhere else. Your thoughts?
I do believe that we are getting to a point where our debts are getting due, need to be paid. And so as to avoid a scenario where we default and have issues ahead, it's good that we pay our debts, because as we rightfully know, they still have to borrow. So how are you borrowing if you're not repaying? That's number one. Number two, on cutting on development, I don't see a problem so long as whatever you cut is used well and not misappropriated and goes into some pockets. That will be okay. But the only thing I'd have a problem with in that development fund that they cut is hospitals, because I do believe healthcare is quite dire in this country, and we really need to invest more in healthcare.
But where has the problem been? I tend to think the problem has been where the human capital is concerned,
Yes.
and less about the buildings.
Yeah, of course. But when you talk about hospitals, there's also medication. There's also those who work there, they need to be paid.
Yeah.
Because you also have doctors who still complain about remuneration. You still have issues of
Because
medication.
my understanding is that they're cutting the money is going into the long-term projects,
Yeah.
but they've increased health workers by way of community health promoters and all of that. I'm looking at the clock, sorry.
Okay.
Allow me to ask Jim
No worries.
to weigh in there.
So I think the idea that they have cut spending on development, but increased spending on ministerial recurrent expenditure, for instance.
What page are you on so I can flip?
Just the last page, just that back page of the
Okay.
Daily Nation. In the revised plan, Treasury has cut development spending by about 41 billion, but increased ministerial recurrent expenditure by 83 billion. And then also how much money that goes into interest on debt, salaries for civil servants has also been increased. Now, we were meant to be here. Without looking at the nitty-gritties, the grand scheme of things is that we have increased our budget from the initial about 3.7, from the initial about 3.7 trillion to about 3.9 trillion. So there's about a 5% increase in our overall budget. It means we've also increased the budget deficit, and it means we need to find ways of funding that deficit. Because KRA is not going to raise 3.9 trillion. Their projections were to raise about 2 trillion or thereabout. So to fund that deficit, it means you're going to borrow more. So are we getting ourselves in the same hole? Because the president came on board with a very promising plan, and he said we need to live within our means. We can't live outside of our means. But the things that they're spending on, like education, these are plans that came after the budget, right? The new funding model for TVETs, the scholarship program for university students. There is also the setting up of the infrastructure for junior high, which needs to be done. Those are three critical sectors that, whether we like it or not, funding has to go into those places. I think the only problem is that constantly it looks like either the ministries are playing catch up with the budget, or the budget is moving too fast, because the budget was ready in June. This is barely 6 months in the budget, and we're already asking for a supplementary budget and an increase of about 5%. So while I actually agree that these are critical sectors to put funding on, I think there's need for coherence within government over time to ensure that if a plan is coming, it comes in the next financial year, so that we're not constantly increasing the budget while struggling to raise funds for the deficit that we have.
Okay, I'm seeing a quote here. Increase is on account of, and this is the State Department of Crop Development. They have an additional allocation of 14 billion shillings. increases on account of provision of fertilizer subsidy, management of post-harvest losses, funds for the purchase of food reserve, and provision for maintenance of dryers. Kidimwaga?
Thank you, Olive. One, what the general picture that this paints is that tax, borrow, and spend has failed. And therefore, the government needs to really focus on its original plan of invest and grow. When the government initially...
Original plan of?
Invest and grow.
Invest and grow. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Because when the government came in, when you looked at the obsession with the fertilizer subsidy, with the idea of hustler fund, and all those things that the government were doing, it appeared that the government really wanted to increase production. And that production means that you invest. And then when that investment comes to maturity, then it eases pressure. That seems not to have taken root really. And we have continued to rely on tax and spend. And I dare add tax, borrow, and spend. So this tax, borrow, and spend has failed to deliver. As the government focuses on that, again, we really need to embark on a massive financial fiscal consolidation. That is the only way we can be able to stabilize this ship in the short term, in my view. Thank you.
All right, I just wanted to make a shameless plug. Keep the camera, focus. What's up? Good. Just give me a second, guys. But I wanted to shameless plug an article I wrote that was published on ntvkenya.co.ke, and the reason I mention it, msirudi kwangu bado kidogo tu, is because I wrote about my experience in Kericho, getting into the stadium, the tragic loss of life, and at the end in the end, just 1 second, let me pull it up. Okay, let me just Google. Jade Olive Barrows.
Olive, as you Google yourself, I think it is also important to...
Yes, proceed.
I think it's also important to remind Kenyans that we have not, in this increases, we've not increased any allocation to the counties. And the county allocation has remained as it was. So we have retained all the money at the executive level, where they have about 2 trillion shillings of the total budget. And we only disbursed about 380-something billion to the counties, which is less than about 10% of the total budget. So says a lot about pesa mashinani, devolving money. We're devolving all these functions, but resources are not flowing to the counties. Over to you in Kericho.
Oh, thank you. I found it. Columnist Kidimwaga, see me.
Yes. And it is good to know that you have now taken to writing very seriously.
NTV Kenya, I've always written. It's just of late I've been lazy about it. But ntvkenya.co.ke, Mashujaa Day, Madness, MUD. Just Google people. But in the end, the reason I raise it is because when we're talking about austerity measures, so at the end of the event, when we're coming back to Nairobi, we found ourselves on the tail end. We hitched our wagon to the presidential escort, and man, guys, with the cops on motorcycles, and they were elbowing people off the road, and there we were at the back. Yeah, with the I don't know, I was told the TX, the president's car was coming back to Nairobi. I'm not good with car makes, but I was told it's a V8, although it didn't have the plates.
It's a 300.
So it's a what?
It's a 300.
Oh, okay. So it was coming back to Nairobi. He was not in the vehicle. That's why he didn't have plates. But just that experience of that motorcade. But it's okay. It felt good. Power is good. All right. So on to our topic of conversation. The star should have seen us cheering in the park.
Yeah. Power is good.
We cut to the front of the line. And interesting because when we were getting into the stadium, I told Nick Wambua, my colleague, imagine if we didn't have our press passes.
Wow.
What would it have been like? Because that enabled us to literally cut through the mass of people to the front of the line. So, Azmio outrage over Sabina's new Jubilee job is the headline. of the Star. Sasa tuko topic Jackso. Thank you very much for indulging me. Azimio demands Speaker rescind recognition of faction. So basically, like I said, this morning we're discussing matters, political party hygiene. If you look at the Daily Nation, at the bottom there, it reads, Uhuru now seeks to kick Jubilee rebels out of committees. So I have been told to chukue kidogo a break in Kiswahili is Jackson Ndirangu, mapumziko kidogo tu, turudi sasa na huu mjadala.